Hello, my name is Jay, and welcome to my two-part series on how to cable manage. Now, I've done cable management on multiple builds. I've built 4 or 5 different computers just alone for other people, and this computer I've built over like 10 times already at this point. So by this point, I know pretty much what I'm doing. Now, I want to make the point in saying this, though, that this is the for the basic components. This is the kind of tutorial for the basic components. I'm actually going to be rewiring my main build, which has a lot of my hard drive and stuff, when I get my new hard drive that I'm planning to get, which is a 2 terabyte, just for some more video editing, along with some 4K footage, etc. So that's the main plan. So that's what basically, there'll be a second part of this will be for more hard drives if you have a more complex system. This is just basically for like a hard drive, all that stuff. Basic, simple cable management. So first off, I want to make a couple points. This is hopefully will work for both non and fully modular, semi-modular, and non-modular power supplies. I do want to make one point though. I built with all of them. The biggest thing for me though is if you're out there and you want to have some nice pretty cable management, get a fully modular. It allows you to upgrade and get some different cables, and the cables tend to be a little bit nicer in my personal opinion. So without further ado, we're going to start off. So if you have a fully modular, you'll have the option to plug in stuff. If you have a semi-modular, you'll have everything except this one cable right here that will be, pretty much soldered in there, and you won't be able to take it out. And the other reason, downside to that, of course, if you wanted to add custom cable mods. And then the fully non-modular is the one that you got to watch out for, because that's just a bunch of cables in the bottom that really doesn't look good. So if you're out there and you want something that looks semi-decent, make sure you at least get a semi or a fully modular power supply. So if you've already done that, you're like, well, let's get into the wiring. So a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, the best thing to keep in mind is you want to have everything in the back of the case. Even if you have a case that you don't want to have, you have 2 sides. Like this case right here has 2 glass panels on both sides. You really have to watch out and try to make sure you get the wires, on the back, on this back of this metal plate right here. That way they don't get seen. So the simple logic behind this, as I said, is using zip ties to pretty much tie everything together. And let's get into it. So I've gone through and finished the build. Now, one of the biggest things I want to get started with is if you have some colored cable like this, it's not your way to go. Hopefully when you picked out your parts, you got some black SATA cables and have a general color scheme to keep your build in. This is a black and I guess, it could go pretty blue. Most of the hardware is blue. So, it's not really a really smart color scheme, but it is red, blue, and black, I guess is what we'll call it. You don't want any of these yellow cables. You can throw those away. You need, hopefully, to keep all these colors. And this is more something to help your build look than actually cable management. So, I haven't plugged anything in yet. Now, the big thing you want to keep in mind is you want to start with your biggest cables first. I've got an extra thick motherboard cable. So the best way to start with this one is pretty much to go around back and find a good spot that's close to where it needs to be. Now, since there's nothing right here, you got to kind of go around here somewhere where it's easy, the closest port to go to, and you pretty much just sit down, find the clip where the clip is, and just plug it in from here. If you plug in all the stuff from the motherboard first, you'll be really good, all your necessities first, and then you just kind of like pull it, and then you're pretty much good to go. So there you go, that's that cable. Next I'm going to start with the SATA cable, or the SATA. This one is for the graphics card, so I'm just going to plug this one in as well, and then I'm going to go see if I can push it to the same spot as well. Now, you could do a couple different options. This one just appears to be the closest, and I like it personally the best, since you're just trying to keep all the cables across the case. So next is the CPU, and this actually I have an extra EVGA, or an extra not EVGA, extra graphics card port. Anyway, so now we've got this. We've got to find the power, especially for the said motherboard, for the CPU, etc. So for this case, there's actually a hole right above where the power cable needs to be, and so I am actually just going to go through and pop the front panels off to actually get access to it. So to get access to it, you pretty much just go through and pop it in. Start with the CPU. Just plug that sucker in, and then you go through. And for me, I'm just going to try to pop this SATA cable down here. Next, we got to get these SATA ports. Now, you'll have something along this line, a SATA thing. I'm going to go about doing mine by putting them underneath the hard drive in the open bay below. You can have it above, you can do whatever you like, but I personally just like going using the extra bay above or below. You know, we'll go above because that allows us to have some upgrades for some future hard drives. So the good thing is, if you add multiple hard drives, you basically just go put another hard drive there, put another hard drive there, and then send the cable through whatever on top of whatever the bottom one was. But since we don't want to have all these cables seen, let's just go through and put these cables back here, out of sight, so they won't be seen, and then you keep the same thing. And now you do the same thing for the SATA as well. The SATA has the same kind of issue there. I'm just going to push this SATA cable through here. And as you can see, there you go, you keep your hard drive nice and clean. I'm also going to send this port back through here. This will be the first one I complete the connection, and use the lowest bottom connector for that, and then just pull everything back there as well. So now that hard drive is pretty much ready to go, and you've got all your stuff back here. We'll worry about these extra random cables in a second. So now I'll advise you to turn, I'm going to turn this case around real quick so you guys can see how I've done the stuff back here. As you can see, we've got it pretty much this, as I said, the CPU cord right here to orient yourself, and this is everything over here that needs to be powered. And so for me, this can be done multiple ways. I think the best way to start is with, of course, the shortest cord. If you go through and start plugging in the shortest cord, which hopefully you guys can see through the bottom, you can go through and CPU 1. Just start by plugging in the shortest to the, I guess, the longest. So just keep in mind that you want to kind of find some places to tuck the stuff away if it's not going to be that, you know, you don't want it cutting through across your whole case. So just keep in mind that it's a SATA. Yep, SATA. Making sure I'm plugging in the right ones. And then, of course, you just go through, plug them in, shortest to greatest, and then we'll deal with the last little bit of case cables as well. So there we go, there's that. And then I'm just going to go through. But now, obviously, this doesn't look good yet, but we can take some zip ties in a couple seconds, and it will be perfectly fine. So I'm just going to plug in the last VGA. And so there you go. You've got your kind of random cables in here. The best way I honestly would probably go about doing it would probably be hiding the majority of the cables actually up here, because it just feels like this is a lot of extra space to hide stuff back here, and this would keep it outside of view. And I'd probably put a zip tie there, and then that's what I do. I'm gonna actually take these cables because these are what we need to plug in still. So without further ado, I'm going to do the zip tie, tie a zip tie there, tie a zip tie there, and that's probably where I'm going to end up putting the cables like such. Okay, here's our zip ties. Now, for the purpose of this, I'm just going to make sure everything's nice and tight. So this usually, and I say usually here, usually kind of cuts along here and actually can fit on this little ledge right here. So I'm going to take and wire this through and push this through across these cables right here, underneath them, to actually keep them where they're supposed to go. And I'm going to do the same here as well. So then we've got a nice little backing to hold them up. Now I'm going to go turn the case back around so you can see what the front we've got to do with all these. So let's see what we got. So basically I might just try pushing them all through here. Now I might have to move to one of these depending on the where the location on the board is. So there we go. So I'm going to start. Hey, I've got an extra case fan I got to plug in, which I didn't actually see earlier. So the biggest thing for me is I'm just going to kind of find where the nearest case fan is, which looks like actually going through up here. I'll just actually take this out. It does look like right there It's like the best way to put the case mount in. Just really depends on the closest kind of situation. Of course, the cable is only so long, so you can't do too much with that one. So now that cable management is looking kind of good on there, I just tucked these cables back up there. Let's actually start getting these on the front. So these actually are all the important I/O that we really need. So, case, let's see, USB 1, I'm trying to think, USB 2. Just gonna start pushing cables through here so I can start getting what we need through here as well. Because there's a lot that needs to get pushed through this, and regardless, the cable color I'm not too fond of, but that's not really something you can control, especially if you just choose to. You just want to do good cable management. I mean, yes, some different cables will make your case look a lot better. Let's see. So, just plug them in as needed. This is a USB. This is an HD audio, which for some odd reason happens to be all the way over here. So I might actually go about unplugging this graphics card, putting the HD audio down. Like, why they decided to put this here on the board, I have no idea. Tuck this cable down there. Tuck the cables. And put the graphics card back in there with the cable underneath it. Just because that's how I'd recommend it. Alright, so now that's got the cable underneath it. Tuck the cables out of sight, any extra ones you have. And then you just kind of go through and grab the rest. Now this cable I'm just going to kind of push underneath the graphics card. It's kind of out of sight, and then you can just go through and find your ports. I'm just going to go power and just kind of just work on it, whatever you need. I just push, just install each cable as needed. This is the part where you just got to install them. But once you install everything, and once you get everything where it should be, now of course keep in mind this is really intense stuff. And once you've kind of gotten all these cables that you need to, make sure I've gotten everything. This is a tedious process. So now you've got all this extra stuff here. Keep in mind you can just go back here, go add some slack, yank them back from up here into this little area where you have some slack, or that designated area that you've decided that isn't necessarily going to be of great importance. And then what I'd recommend at this point is go through and put a zip tie right there. Keep all those cables nice and tight right there. And that one just popped off. So just work on kind of making sure all those cables are nice and tight right here. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to go through and flip this around actually because it needs to be flipped around. But then go through and just add the nice little tidy zip tie. And then just yank the cables back here as well. Now this case was, two reasons I chose this case. Number one, it doesn't have anywhere close to as good cable management as the other ones do. If I can actually get my hand in there to... Doesn't have the best cable management options. Two, you really do have a lot of limits on what you can do. Still though, you've got some what you'd expect on a normal case, but you still have, I guess, the semi good looking. Because as I said, depending on the case you have, you just gotta kind of find and work with whatever you have. This is just kind of the options you have here, but everything's plugged in. I'm going to put the tops back on and sides, but as I said, it really does depend on what you find in your case, and there's no exact answer for cable management. You just got to find the nearest spot, have a designated area to keep your cables, which I've decided to be back here, which really doesn't get seen too much, and you've got this, really nice looking cabled spot, and you don't have any cables cutting across some weird odd place. So that's going to wrap up for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, I wish you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, I'm sorry. And I hope to see you around if you're interested. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.